Are you connected now?
I am now, I think.
Okay. Alicia, oh. I think.
I'm unmuting. There we go. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
I can.
I can.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, we had a little bit of a technical difficulty. We have a whole bunch of different notes from doing this a few different times, and one note says to do it one way, one note says to go another way. So we were in before, but in a different section. So we're good. We're just going to get up our stuff, and we're going to actually start right away. I'm just going to introduce myself for right now. If you get any of that glitchy feedback at all, try to mute your volume. Usually that's when we kind of hear that little bit of a feedback from the noise and stuff. We found that usually is helpful. But I'm Alicia Court. I teach first grade here in the New London Area School District. I've been teaching here for 4 years. I've taught also fourth grade here, second grade here. I've taught first and at-risk and reading interventions in New London and also in Watoma and Shawano Area School District. And I'm also the elementary PK2 representative for the WMC board.
I'm Lynn Shaw, and I also teach in the New London School District with Alicia. This is only my second year in New London. This is my 25th year of teaching middle school, though. Actually, 25 years of teaching 7th grade in some capacity or another. So I was previously to coming to New London last year, I was working in the Bondwell School District, which is where I also live. And I was there, gosh, 17 years, I think. I was in New London, in Bondwell. So I'm kind of just helping out Alicia. We do this, and it seems to be going over pretty well. So,
besides the technology,
yeah,
it's always a great thing. So we're going to kind of go through how this all kind of works with the principles to action and everything. Each week when we meet, we'll kind of start out with any questions that you might have, any problems that you might have with the technology at all. At the end of this, we'll actually go over how to get into Edmodo, because that's another piece that we try to add in. So that way there's a little something to do throughout the week as well, besides just the webinars in Zoom. So just to kind of make sure that we have everything kind of up and running and everybody is able to kind of respond back, at the top, there should be a chat option. And you can just kind of put out your answer to this question. We kind of came up, what was the funniest comment a student made in your math class so far this year? Or if you don't have one that you can think of this year, maybe any previous years, anything that just comes to mind, what's the funniest comment you've had your student make in a math class?
yeah, that is that's funny, because that's what my own child says all the time to me. Why do I need to know that? All I have to do is.
All right, so we kind of have the comment, we don't have to learn this. We can use it with our cell phone. My favorite usually is always, well, my mom and dad say this isn't how you do math. Your teaching is totally wrong. And that just kind of goes to show a little bit of, the times and how math is kind of changing and progressing over time. Can you think of another one?
Yeah, I would say that probably mine is, somebody said to me this year actually that I'm not good at math because my mom and my dad said that they weren't good at math. And I said to them, being good at math is not genetic. It's not something that, that you're going to get from your parents. It really comes down to how hard you're willing to work. So I thought that was good.
So now that we kind of have a way that you know how to kind of chat back and forth with us, if you come up with a question at all, we can actually check our chats as we're going through. Otherwise, at the end, if you have a question or something a comment that you want to make, we can always add it in that way as well. Just kind of a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be doing with. So this is kind of what we're going to do. We're going to kind of go over the background of Principles to Actions. We'll also discuss the math teaching practices. They're different than the regular math practices that you would find in the Common Core State Standards for mathematics. And then just kind of going over what our book study structure and action steps will be.
So we want to start with our learning target, or what we're looking at, what we hope that you will gain from this process. And hopefully you will begin to use and learn how to use the Principles to Actions book to support and improve math education and when you're teaching. I know every time that we've now done this is our 4th time doing the Principles to Action webinar. We did 3 last year and 1 this year now. And I would have to say that every time beforehand, you pick up that blue book and it is reaffirming in some ways, because I'm reading things that I think, okay, we do this really well, or I do this really well. And then there are other ways that I think of, oh, wow, I really need to improve on this, and I could do this a little bit better. And I think year to year that's going to change just based on your students and experiences in which you've had going in. So, but that's kind of our goal, is that you will be able to utilize this book, not just now, but in the future.
So this is kind of the history of how Principles to Action kind of came to be. You can kind of see the progression from, 1989, where we had that curriculum and that evaluation standards for school mathematics, into the principles and standards for school mathematics. And then even now, as it has progressed into what the Common Core State Standards for mathematics has said since 2010. And from there, the Principles to Action book really coincide with all of this progression that has happened across in math. So really, we always ask, you're taking time out of your busy schedule and, extending your workday, but why is Principles to Actions really important? Why do we even take time out of our busy lives to really go? The whole idea of this high quality math instruction that can be very effective in not only our own teaching, but also effective for our students and their learning. And this is definitely a non-negotiable. We need to make sure that all students are learning math at a very high level. And we're pushing every student, even though it might be different per se with where each student is, but we want to make sure that we're progressing and really making sure we are teaching at the highest level we can.
You don't want to be, every teacher puts in a lot of time to try to ensure that their students are learning. And I guess I always viewed it as, you don't want to put in all that time, but not do what's best for your students and best for you too. And I think in the classroom. So this gives you a great opportunity to do that, to really have high quality standards and high expectations for every student. So.
And if you're like me, you're in the process of doing your wonderful SLO right now and all that learning plan. Yeah.
It's due on Friday.
I know. It's a great resource to also add in to your teacher effectiveness. If, not that you don't already have a whole bunch of resources, but it's just one more to add.
Right.
So really, what is this Principles to Action? This comes right from the text. It's page 4. Now, you wouldn't have been expected to read anything prior to this, so don't feel like, oh my goodness, was I supposed to have read? Mm-hmm. We know some of you are just getting the text, the e-text right now, but the primary purpose is really to just fill that gap between the development and the adoption of the Common Core State Standards of Mathematics, along with other standards and their practices, policies, programs, and actions required for their widespread and net successful implementation.
I think the content in math, in a lot of, especially at the elementary level with the Common Core adoption, what is being taught has changed. I don't know that in the 7th grade it's changed that drastically, but really what's changed is how you teach it and how it's taught. And I think this is a great guide and a great tool to be able to do that, to aid you in the Common Core.
So these are kind of the guiding principles that we see for school mathematics. You can see those 6 that are there on the left, and we can see that teaching and learning is there in that bolded red, and then the other 5 that you can see, that those are kind of those essential elements that are part of a math program. What we're going to do is we're really going to focus on that red part, that teaching and learning, that's really us. And we're going to focus on that throughout this book study.
Yeah. The things, the 2 through 6 are all things that are important. We're not saying that they're not important because they really are, but they aren't things that you can necessarily control. The curriculum in which your district chooses, or the tools and technology in which your district has, how you assess, all those things are things that are important, but it's not something that you can control. But that teaching and learning piece is essential, and it's something that you have the ability to change or to control in your classroom.
So we kind of think of, what does it take to make an effective mathematics program, a really excellent one? We always get this, like, what do you use? What is the most successful? What would be best for us to implement? What we're really looking at is not just an old way of teaching. We're actually really just promoting really good problem solving. And now we're looking at this new meaning of learning through our teaching, and also collaborating with others too, and how that's going to affect our students and the way that they're going to learn.
This statement is interesting to me because I often think that, as educators, we are always looking at things to make ourselves better and the things that we can do. But this also works with your students too. Them doing things individually, but also collaboratively. And that's something we'll get into when we get into these practices. But I just think that that's interesting.
So we kind of want you to take a moment. We're going to share out in that chat format again, is kind of just think of the best math lesson you've ever taught. What really made it good? What made it feel successful? What were your students doing? What were you doing? How did you gauge if people were active and that it was a success? So kind of take a moment to just chat that out. I love the sound of clicking on the keyboard.
Reminds me of when I got my master's and everybody was typing the part of it that everybody had to have that was pretty much the same. And it was back in the typing class. You're too young for that. You don't remember typing class.
I do want to.
Do you?
Hi.
Hello,
Sorry.
welcome. I think somebody might have just joined. We're just actually adding in just the best math lesson you've ever taught, and we're using the chat option to kind of share that out with everybody. We're just kind of thinking, like, what were your students doing to be engaged? What were you doing? How were you explaining your results and everything?
Well, I think while we have people that are typing up their answers, I'm going to share that's okay, what mine would be. I think that for me, when I have a really good lesson, I have students that are talking about math in groups. I do a lot of collaborative work. I try to do a lot of collaborative work. And I have them talking about math, and I have them explaining what they were doing, and I have them engaged in that process, using multiple representations of what they're doing to justify their results. I'm not doing, in my perfect math lesson, if I were to visualize what that looks like, I'm never doing anything. I'm just walking around facilitating. They are the ones that are they are doing it. So I think that would be mine, at least at the middle level.
So we have a few chats. I don't know if you can see everybody's chats and everything. So some people have said, you know, as an interventionist, they're coming in and the students are doing group activities. You know, the students are actively engaged. They're having the math talk, the discourse that Lynn had kind of talked about. Another one had said that John would put out that his students were actively learning, that they're physically acting out each function when they're thinking in the concepts of parent functions and stuff. And I think that's key, you know, having something where they're taking it very intrinsically and they're either acting it out or doing the learning on their own, I think is really the key part of that. So I think as we read through most of these, it's just that the students are actively engaged. It's the students. They're the ones that are doing the learning. They're the ones that are kind of guiding the lesson, if you will. And then you're just there, like Lynn had said, to kind of help them if they get a roadblock to either move on or ask some other questions, or what's another way you could kind of go to have them keep going and explaining how they're getting solutions.
Yeah, I think anytime I tell my students, anytime I feel like I'm doing too much talking, then that's not good. Then the lesson isn't going well. I'm doing all the talking. So, you know, that would be my goal, would be to not have me doing a whole lot of instruction, have them do a lot of investigation and a lot of problem solving.
And even like in the elementary level, you know, some people are saying, well, we're just starting out. Well, I'm just starting out, maybe starting some of those base concepts, but my students are really the ones that are finding out, seeing those patterns, finding out how to use different tools successfully and for different problems. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit more in a little bit as we go on. So this is different modes of representation. And I think the big aha from what we had just discussed in what kind of lessons you were creating is you want to have these different modes of representations going on to really have a successful lesson. You're going to have them modeling with drawings or pictures. There might be some written symbols. They're discussing through that language. You're applying it to a real world situation. And then you have a different way that they can model it, whether it's through manipulatives or if they're acting it out. And the key with this modes of representation is you're hitting on all of these different modes. You're not just staying in one area. When I first started teaching, I'm very guilty that I would stay in one of these, you know, oh, we're just going to use the written symbols. But then I wasn't going enough into the other modes, and my students then weren't comfortable in those modes, and I was doing a disservice to them. So now I really try to see, okay, am I spending too much time in a certain area, or do I have certain students that always like to just do a picture, but they don't like to talk about their thinking? Then I'm going to kind of nudge them to try to work through that other mode of representation to help them be successful in each of these.
I think, you know, the days of when I was in school, or when a lot of you might have been in school, and it was my, you know, algebra teacher or my even middle school teacher, whatever, it needs to be this way and only this way. And I think those days are done. You know, today I was doing constant rate of change because I'm in ratios and proportions right now. And I showed them like 5 different ways that they could determine the constant rate of change when looking at a line that's graphed. And I don't care which way they do it, as long as I can understand or I can follow their thinking and they can justify why it's right. So often they will do more than one method to show that it is, you know, what they have is the correct method or the correct answer. And I think that that's really a key, is that just that the way we used to do things is not the same anymore.
I like to have this poster actually in my classroom. It's on page 25 of your Principles to Action book. Once you start reading into it and everything, it's a great resource to have even in PLC meetings for mathematics, so that way you could even give that to other colleagues or even administrative, like this is what you're going to see in my classroom to make sure it's an effective math classroom. Another part of this, as we are going through these different modes of representation, we're also going to get this strands of proficiency. We want proficient students, but then to really build that proficient student, we're going to dive into all of these 5 areas: that strategic competence, procedural fluency, conceptual understanding, adaptive reasoning, and productive disposition. The problem that we've had in the United States is we were really feeding heavily into this procedural fluency, know it by memorization, rote. You got to give it to me within 3 seconds. There's no strategies with it. But as we just pulled on that one strand, and instead of thinking of these as kind of braided together, we pulled so much on procedural fluency that really broke apart that proficient mathematic lesson. So what we need to really do as educators, and even seeing with our students, is making sure that we are developing all of these strands at the same time, so that way we really have a strong mathematical proficient lesson and a mathematical proficient curriculum, and help our students be mathematically proficient as well.
So these are the mathematics teaching practices. This is different than, a lot of times people will get that mixed up with the Common Core math practices. The math practices are what students use to show, or we use to show, whether students are effective mathematical learners, I guess. The math teaching practices are the practices that we as educators need to do in our classroom through our instruction to ensure that our students are getting the best mathematics education that they can and that they deserve. So these are the practices. These are the practices that we're going to talk about. Next week, I think we do the first 4, and then on the 3rd week, we do the last 4. So
this week, what we're going to just really hone in on is like the progression of principles to actions and why really study it. So what we want you to do is we're not going to do the poll because the polling actually doesn't work in a meeting.
yes.
We actually want you to chat out what is one of these mathematic proficient practices that you feel is an area of strength. Just pick one of those and chat that out to the group of which one you feel is an area of strength. I'm laughing because Lynn's going, I don't know if I could just pick one right now. But I think when I was first teaching, I feel like I would probably be stronger in one area than what I am.
I think probably I do. I have a hard time with the goals. We do goals, but I'm not always the best at going back to the goal.
Strength.
Yeah.
Strength first.
I would say that probably the multiple representations is probably my strength. Which I think builds them into that conceptual understanding. So they're really kind of tied together when you look at them. So
we have already, using and connecting mathematical representations, purposeful questioning, building that procedural fluency with conceptual understanding.
which is huge.
Yes.
Really, really big. Even at the middle level, you don't.
Oh, that productive struggle. We're going to talk about that a little bit more too later.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that, with all the different principles actions webinars that we have done, every time we ask this question, it always intrigues me that there's so many educators that don't just hone in on one, which is great. Like, we see areas of strength and people feel areas of strength in these math teaching practices throughout all of them, which is great to see.
I tend to, one thing too that you might want to consider doing, when I look in, that we're going to kind of get to this next a little bit less, but when I look at the math teaching practices every year, I try to pick out one that I'm really going to focus and try to improve upon. So like last year, my big one was mathematical discourse conversations. And so I implemented different things in my classroom that we do almost daily to try to get students to talk and to explain their thinking and to talk about the math and just to have those conversations. I think kids learn best from kids. I may think I'm a great teacher, but I tell them they don't learn from me. They learn from each other better than they can learn from anybody else. So I think that is, for me, that was an area that I really worked on. But I think it's nice to try to pick one maybe and look at that for something that you want to do. And that could also be part of your SLO. If you need to do something like that, that could be, there's lots of things and lots of resources out there that could help you.
So we looked at an area of strength. What I'd like you to do now is kind of think about, what is an area you feel though that you would still like to work on. We don't need to chat that out or anything, but I think, like Lynn said, it's important to go back and reflect also, not only what am I really good at, but we need to also be mindful of, this is an area that maybe I want to work on and just kind of hone in on this year. There's 8 of them, so that can be overwhelming. So that's why we say, maybe think of one area that you really want to try and just kind of build on throughout the year. And then maybe what you can do is even, as you get through into a couple of months of school, maybe you feel like, if I was working on building those purposeful questions and I feel like I'm really doing that now, maybe there's another math teaching practice I was kind of thinking of doing. And maybe I can start now looking more at that one and trying that one out.
I think what's really interesting to me too is that, when you look, like I said, I always try to pick one, and I've been doing this for the last maybe 3 years. And so mine was discourse last year. Okay. Well, with discourse, along with that came others. So along with the discourse came the purposeful questions, because you had to ask questions to get them to think, because you want them to do that investigation, which also then kind of led to the implementing tasks, high cognitive tasks. That kind of went together because you're trying to find activities where they can work together in a group and come up with solutions. So they kind of almost flow. That when you pick one, the others kind of tend to fall in
They're all
line.
braided
Yes,
together.
they
like
really
the
are.
Strands of proficiency.
They really are. So, but I would strongly suggest that you pick one and see if there's one that you can maybe work on during the course of the year. And if you are looking for something that could be an SLO goal or a PPG even, that maybe could be something that you do.
So as you're reading in your Principles to Action book in this next week and stuff, what we wanted to focus on this first section is just kind of diving into it a little bit. Those different modes of representation, but there's also a big part in the beginning. Oh, there we go. It's this productive and this unproductive beliefs about teaching and learning mathematics. And if you notice on the left-hand side is those unproductive beliefs, that memorization, that there's only one way that you can apply mathematics. We find that a lot of times, a lot of people that dislike math have a lot of these unproductive beliefs, and that's how they view mathematics. However, what we want to do to be effective educators and really make sure that our students feel successful in areas of math is we want to now promote more of these productive beliefs. So I just want you to take a moment to kind of peruse through what are those productive beliefs and what are they kind of thinking of. As you're kind of looking through those different teaching and learning beliefs, what I want you to kind of think about is even reflecting on like your own district. What are you thinking your own district kind of is doing with their teaching of mathematics? Do you feel sometimes they have a more unproductive or a more productive belief in different areas?
I think when you're looking at these, I can completely and totally remember about 4 or 5 years, 4 years ago probably, when I first read this book. Probably was 4 years ago now. And I remember looking at those productive and unproductive beliefs. And like I said, some of them were reaffirming, for me personally, that I do these things and that's good, but there are other areas that I can be better. And I think too, as an educator, you have to look at what you have in your own room first. And then like, there are other areas, you've got your building and then you've also got your district. So, and maybe they're not always on the same course that you're on, I know that I can honestly say that in my past position in Bonduelle, I felt alone in a lot of areas. And that's hard, and it's really, really hard. But I always felt that, I just need to do what's best for my students and know what's best for my students. And unless you have somebody that's going to say this is the way it has to be, which is really hard to do, I think that you have to really just kind of do what you can do to improve. But, think about your district and your building, and then in you too. And where are you on that list? Do you have more productive, more unproductive? I think that if I think about where we've come in the last, Alicia and I are both facilitators for the Wisconsin State Math Initiative, WSME. So I don't know if any of you have ever attended a WSME Institute in the summer, but I can honestly say, I think we both went to the first, we've been since the very beginning, facilitators together. We were trained at the same time. And I think when I look at where I was then to where I am now, the difference is drastic. And it just changes every year. I think gets better and better.
So we wanted you to kind of peruse through those a little bit and look at those different beliefs. Now we're going to kind of think about even our district as a whole, kind of thinking where do they kind of fall? Does your district have a more productive belief? Do you feel sometimes we feel a little bit more unproductive? And we don't want to think of it like, oh my gosh, I know I've had some of these unproductive beliefs. I'm awful. Like, no, it's more of principles to actions really focuses on, if you kind of find that sometimes your district teaching staff might have some of those unproductive beliefs, how do we then progress it into a more productive belief? It's not, oh my goodness, this is awful, and we have to get it to a perfect area. It's no, how can I now transition so that way the focus isn't so much on this procedure, this memorization, this roteness, all about the teacher-centered and the students are just kind of doing what I want to do. How do we now focus it more onto its student focus? It's them developing those concepts of mathematics. Just as a question to kind of think about, and you can chat out, if your district has gone from some of those unproductive to productive beliefs, what have you done in your teaching staff to kind of get yourselves to there? How have you shifted that focus?
Right. Because that really is key. You can only do so much, because we're teachers. We're not administrators. So maybe there's only so much that we can do. But there are things that you can do, because I think my experience has been when somebody sees what you're doing and what's going on in your classroom, and really in the long run, the positive results that the students are having, I think that they can't help but be interested and kind of get sucked into what you're doing and maybe ask questions. I know in the middle school here, we are very strong in every math teacher at the same grade level being on the same page and doing the same thing in common assessments. And I'm sure you are too, but that's really hard, especially if you're not necessarily teaching in the same manner. Mm-hmm. That's really challenging. So, where does your district fall? Is your district more unproductive, or are they more productive? And maybe, like Alicia said, maybe you can, like I can tell you in Bonduelle, we were very unproductive. and we were moving towards the productive. But it's a really slow process. And unfortunately, I don't know that, I don't think that has continued much, which is really too bad. But I don't know, think about that. And where do you fall? And if you have questions or if you want to comment, you can post something on our chat space.
I'm going to go to the next slide because it's kind of looking at our own selves and kind of thinking about what do our students have?
Right.
Do they have more of those productive beliefs than unproductive beliefs? I would have to say, you know, even in my own district right now with New London, I've seen a shift into getting it more math focused with our students. Our students are the ones that really are kind of guiding where my math lesson is going to go. Yes, I have certain things that I know I want to teach with them. However, I really am doing a lot of gauging and a lot of listening of what my students are believing and what they are kind of saying in their group discussions and everything. I feel my students, from where I first started to today, I feel they have much more productive beliefs. And I think it's to how the teaching has been evolving over time.
I think if you know, when I think back to when we first implemented the Common Core standards and how there was such a, and I think the students and the parents, because, you know, the students in middle school especially will go home and they're not sure how to do something. And the parents are like, you know, what the heck is a double number line? Or what's a tape? You know, what are you doing drawing pictures in 7th grade? And I think that's really come a long way, I think. I think that at the beginning it was a lot of, you know, my teacher won't help me, or my teacher, you know, but no, it's not. It's that I want you to try to, you know, struggle, and I want you to try to come up with that versus me just telling you that. But I think that, I don't know, and maybe I just view it as my students have really evolved as much as I've evolved as a teacher in the last 5 years. I think that they have evolved. And part of that is, you know, like Alicia said, you know, they're getting used to some of the things that we're doing. Families are getting used to some of the things that we're doing. And I think it's taking hold.
I think too, it's going back to those modes of representation. We're expecting them to show us in different ways than just being able to do one. Somebody had put out, you know, it's helpful to talk with that student and to really share the difference between struggle and a productive struggle.
Right.
And I think that's key. And I think even having our parents kind of realize too, that difference between a struggle and a productive struggle. I always love it, parent-teacher conferences. I really like parent-teacher conferences. I know I'm that weird person, but we actually, I talk with the parents about that, saying, you know, math, you know, if you have any issues, I want you to call, I want you to talk to me, I want you to send the note. Sometimes some of the math that we're going to do in class, your child might come home and be like, wow, we have this problem. We still didn't solve it today, but we're going to try it again tomorrow. And not right away to jump like, oh my goodness, you're not solving things. Isn't it supposed to be done right away? But really just honing in on, hey, they want to come back. They are going to be thinking about that all night long about, ooh, what if we tried this? Or what if I did this with my group? And I think that the parents seeing that too helps them kind of see that productive struggle. Yes.
I probably would agree with that. I think that that's really hard in a classroom when you have a classroom of varying degrees of ability.
Yes.
And you have kids that'll, you know, get it and be done and race through it and really do have a good understanding of it. And then you have those students that don't and that struggle more. I find a lot of times in 7th grade that I have a lot, and I think secondary across the board, you have kids that work at such different speeds, you know, so what can take one student 10 minutes to do well will take another student 40 minutes to do well. I myself I have twin daughters, and they are now 20 as of last Friday. And that makes me feel very old, by the way. But they are so different. You know, they're twins, but they are like opposite, day and night different. And Samantha would be a get to busy, get to work, get it done kind of girl, and would do it well, but would just she'd focus and she'd do it, you know, she's going to do it. Where Elizabeth was always more of a pokey puppy when she would do her work, and what would take Samantha, same work that they're both doing the exact same thing, but what would take Samantha 10 minutes to do, it literally sometimes would take Elizabeth an hour and a half to do. And I think that sometimes we get trapped in that in our classroom, unfortunately.
What I found in those cases is I try to set them up with somebody that I know isn't going to be just
Right.
saving them,
Right.
but is a really good teacher per se. Like, hey, what would you do next? But I do a lot of modeling with that as well. I know it comes down to time. Like if we could just add more time to the day, wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yeah.
But again, I try to model to, like, what do I do if I'm stuck on this? And I have little Sammy over here that wants to just tell me how to do it, but I don't want to do that. So we do a lot of modeling and kind of talking through that. If only we could bottle the perfect answer, but that's just something that I kind of try to do, just to kind of show my students that, everyone's going to be at their own rate. How do I help somebody then without giving them an answer? Or how do I ask different questions to help them kind of think another way?
There's, you can, I'll put maybe, I think I have this electronically. I'm not positive, but even if I don't have it electronically, I can put it in, I can scan it and make a PDF in it, and we can put it on this Edmodo page that we're going to talk about at the end. But I have a document that has lots of different questioning techniques that you can use. And I've already given that to students in group work. If you're working with somebody and somebody's not there, they're not allowed to answer a question. They're only allowed to pose a question. And I've done that before, and it's really fun to watch kids do. And they don't like asking me for help. Real quickly they learn that I don't answer them. I question them, and then they get frustrated and they'll try to go to somebody else, like, because I do have a class where I have a support staff person in here, an aide in my classroom, and they'll want to go run to her versus coming to me because they know that I'm not going to tell them that I'm going to question them. So I agree with Alicia that modeling is super important. I mean, the first week and a half in my classroom was modeling. Modeling multiple representations, modeling discourse, going through all of those things, because I think if you set that groundwork at the beginning of the year, everything else goes much more smoothly. And I don't think it's too late to do that now. We are only a couple weeks in, so I think we'd be pretty good.
Mm-hmm. So we're rounding kind of the end of our webinar today. So really, this is just kind of reaffirming what are our points of the principles to action. And I think you're going to see this as you go through and start reading the first section for the following week. This is where you're going to be going. The code, is that the right code? You switch that? We're just double checking. So every week, what we're going to ask is we are actually going to post the webinar into the Edmodo group. You all have had your link and your code to get into that group. If you're not able to meet a webinar, that's where we'll upload the video and you can stay with it. We'll also post some different discussion questions. We'll also ask that you come in, you comment, respond, if you have something. We also will post other video clips, a couple other polls, and some other items to aid in further discussion.
That is not the right code.
Yes.
I did save it. Yeah.
Thank you, Tara. Yeah.
I did save it, and some.
Oh, you know what? I
that's
closed out of this before we got
Yes.
you all in, and it asked if I wanted to save it, and we clicked no because we thought we had it.
Yeah.
So
So
the
I did
code-
change it. It's actually, that's not it. That code
Yeah.
that you have
And
there.
it should have worked. That was
this
in
code.
the old
No.
one.
Yeah, it's N7XY. I think that's TH. Yeah, there we go. I made it big. TH.
This is the code that we'd like everybody to try. If you use that
think
other
that's right.
code, that's fine. That just goes to a previous book study that we would have had. But this N7XYTH.
If you go to, if you, I copied and pasted it, but you left it. Hit paste on there once. Right, just hit paste on it. Click paste. That's the code. NHE7N4.
So that's not the, so
No.
I'm sorry.
No.
Tara, you are right.
Yes.
Tara
No.
gets a gold star for the
So,
day.
okay, so what's going to happen in Edmodo, and it's in the email that Deborah Pass sent you from the Wisconsin Math Council. So, and I, like I said, I did that with our technology issues. We continue to run into issues. If you go into Edmodo, we have created a group, and I'm going to be really honest with you. As much as I think, and I enjoy doing this with Alicia, and I enjoy having people here, I think this next piece is probably the most beneficial. We have created a group on Edmodo where, and if you're not familiar with Edmodo, it is just a class organizational type tool that you can use to disperse information to your students. But it's free. You just have to join it for free. And then once you do that, you will type in this code and you'll get entered into our group. And then from that point, we're going to post this video. I'm going to upload this video to YouTube because we're recording it, or we should be recording it. And then we will be posting that to YouTube, and we'll put a link on Edmodo. So if you want to go back, or if you want to share anything that we've talked about with somebody, you can go back and do that. We will also on there be posting other things, like we will be posting poll questions, and we'll be posting other resources that maybe would be beneficial to you, like that questioning document I was talking about. You could also share. If there's things that you come across that you want to share, you can share. And my experience has been that it's great. You know, we have these awesome conversations online throughout the course of the week, and it's beneficial because you can do it whenever you have time to do it.
So what we're going to ask you to do is please read that overview and then the first 4 math teaching practices for next week. Also sign into the Edmodo and look for any comments, discussions, and stuff. Next week, we are going to cover those math teacher practices 1 through 4. And then week 3, we're actually going to cover the math teacher practices 5 through 8. So again, we're sorry for the little glitch in the technology at first. We hope to have that all taken care of. You have the code for the Edmodo. Follow the email that Deborah had given you. And if you have any other questions, please, we'll stick around for the next 10 minutes about, but otherwise we will try to finish by 4:45. So thank you for coming to the webinar and look forward to further discussions.
Have a great week. If you have questions, by all means, you can type them, or you can ask them, I guess.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
This is John. Are you going to post those assignments on the group site?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No
Yep.
problem.
Yep.
We'll also post out that group question stuff that you have,
Yeah.
that PDF.
Well, I might have to make it a PDF tomorrow, so, but I'll do it tomorrow. I'm pretty sure our office is closed now.
John, I think you're the only one left over. Did the chats, could you see everybody's chat and everything?
Yeah, I could see them.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because one other time when we did this, the chats, like, it only came to us, but then nobody
Right.
else could see all the chats.
I had to pop it up,
Okay.
and then it would cover the screen though when you guys would put stuff up, and I'd have to move it off to the side here or there.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you wanted us to kind of share thoughts and ideas verbally. Everybody was kind of quiet.
Well, we tried to do it verbally before.
The first time that we did that, and we had everybody talking at once.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
We had a lot of the boom, 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 and we were like, oh my goodness, our
There was a lot
ears.
of feedback.
So that's why we try to do more of the chats, just typing it out. I know it kind of stinks that you have to type it out, but it just, otherwise it does get really echoey, and it just doesn't work when everybody's trying to respond at the same time, just because everyone's volumes are on.
Right. I think one of the things too that even everything that we did, and we'll have examples you're going to see in the next couple of weeks, but we put all of those things on Edmodo too. So, and there's some really awesome, like I was saying, really great discussions that happen amongst educators, and they're sharing things. So if you have questions or if something comes up, you can always post that there as well, because we will check that too. So,
Thank you.
not a problem. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Bye.
You too.
Thanks, ladies.
Yep.
Thank you.